Welcome to Chai Talk, a live episode for the Left Hook Substack. I'm joined by my friend Professor Eddie Glaude Jr. You've seen him on TV. You've read his books. If you haven't, you should. A brilliant man, a history professor, author of several books. And I have asked him to talk about the one big question: how America destroyed itself because it was unwilling and unable to confront its own racism. Now, I don't know if Eddie agrees with me. I think he does. But I remember about 2 weeks ago, Eddie, I did a post on Blue Sky. And I said like something like, what a shame. Greed and I said racism and greed, the two enduring sins of America that we were unable and unwilling to confront, are the sins that did us in. And I remember Heather Cox Richardson, our mutual friend, sent me a message. And she said, yes, you said it. It was right there in front of our face the entire time. And, she was very kind. She said, I might write an article, write a book about this. I'm like, please do. You and Eddie should write the books on this. But, I was thinking about it. It's almost like that scene from the end of the movie, Don't Look Up, spoiler alert, where Leonardo DiCaprio is sitting there and, humanity has a chance to blow up this comet, but due to greed, and misinformation and racism, the comet destroys us. And Leonardo DiCaprio, right before the comet hits, says, wow, we really had everything, didn't we? Like we had everything and we just let it go. And so you're a historian. You've been writing about this. I ask you, sir, do you agree with me? I think this moment that we're in, which I call an authoritarian movement, a fascist regime, I believe that our unwillingness and inability to confront white supremacy and racism is what has ultimately done us in, at least for the present moment.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Um, it is that reality that left over 600,000 people dead on the battlefield after the Civil War. It is the animating contradiction of this fragile experiment. There's nothing that you can, I don't know what you can say, Wajahat, that can convince me that Donald Trump was the reasonable or rational alternative to your dislike of Kamala Harris. So I could even concede certain claims. I'll concede the claim that you might disagree with Democratic policies. I would concede the claim that you might disagree with the way the Democratic primary ended. That it wasn't really a primary process. That she didn't go. She wasn't chosen by the people. I can concede that. I don't mean I would agree with it, but let's concede it. I can concede that you might think that Biden's policies, right, weren't beneficial for everyday ordinary Americans. Okay, you can make that argument. I could argue back, but there's nothing about those arguments that would lead you to conclude that Donald Trump was the reasonable alternative. And the only thing that could lead us to conclude that, right, is that you didn't want a black woman as the president of the United States. And when we think about the split ticket voting, when we think about, you know, you had all of these um, uh, uh, ballot initiatives around abortion, and we see white women voting against those initiatives, but voting for Donald Trump. Or we see split ticket voting in Wisconsin, where the Democratic candidate won down ballot, but she didn't win at the top of the ballot, right? So when I'm thinking about the 78 million people who made the decision that Donald Trump constituted a reasonable response to their disagreement with Kamala Harris, given all that he had already done
Yep.
and given all that he was saying. And the only conclusion I can draw, by saying this sort of thing, you become the object of a kind of venom and vitriol that actually proves the point,
We're
right?
used to it. Don't worry. We're used
Yeah,
to it.
yeah,
Let's just lean in.
it, and so the only thing I could conclude is that there are some people who would actually rather throw the republic into the trash bin than actually embrace the idea that we are a genuinely multiracial democracy
Mm.
and that a black woman could actually lead the country. And and let me say this by just I know I'm running my mouth, but what the republic has lost, what the country loses in its desperate need to separate itself from us is just tragic. It's unconscionable. Um, and it is going to be our death knell, it seems to me.
I unfortunately agree with you. There is a buzz and echo. I'm sorry, whenever I speak, I don't know if that's on me or if it's on you, but as long as not bothering too many people, um, there is this book called Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl. And in this book, he talks about how a lot of white voters in America literally would rather die than give up white supremacy. He talked to an individual whose hatred of Obama was so intense that as he was dying, he said, "I would rather die than get on Obamacare." And guess what? He died.
Mm.
In the United States of America, there are communities that would rather drain the swimming pool than have black kids swim with white kids. We would rather engage in the bloodiest war in American history, the Civil War, than just give black people their freedom. We would rather have a rapist criminal president who incited a violent insurrection, who tanked the economy as president, than a competent black Indian American woman, regardless of what you think about her, whether you're passionate about her or not. And yet, despite all this, what bothers me intensely, Eddie, is no one wants to talk about the racism that motivated the Donald Trump vote in 2016 and again in 2024. And I feel like I'm being gaslit by America.
You know, that's so powerfully stated. You know why? It's because to confront it is to confront oneself.
Mm,
That is to say, you know, you can't believe what is happening to us, because if you believe it, then you're going to have to deal with you. So there is this ongoing notion that, you know, no, 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 these are decent people. Of course they are, some of them, right? Um, but they're just in an information echo chamber. They believe that these are some of the same voters. I hear this, and I'm sure you hear it. These are some of the same voters who voted for Obama in 2008 and 2000, right? So how can you say that they're racist? Something else must be at work. And I always use the example of Tom Watson.
mm,
Tom Watson was one of the most notorious racists of the 20th century. He was uh, in Georgia, right? Became this rabid white supremacist. Now, why did I say became? Because in the early portions of his career, he was actually a populist, was
mm,
actually found himself defending black farms with other black farmers with guns against, right, plantation owners. But then he realized that if he could create solidarity based upon the notion of whiteness, right, then he could actually get the things that he wanted for working white folk. George Wallace said, excuse my language, after he lost his first election for governor, I will never be out, quote unquote, out niggered again.
yep.
And so part of what I'm suggesting here is that there's no fundamental kind of conundrum or paradox for someone to move from Obama to Trump, right? There's a sense in which if I can change my condition by doubling down on this idea that the republic must remain white, then that selfishness joins with racism or
Mm,
white supremacy in such a way that reproduces this outcome. And it is done, it has happened repeatedly over the course of our history. And the fact that the people won't admit it, the fact that they will threaten you, threaten your family because you name it. You know, where I'm from, we say hit dogs holler.
mm. So it's really funny. Like you could call him a pedophile, but if you call him a racist, oh, they get so upset. They get so upset. How dare you say that? I have a black friend. I have a brown friend I golf with, and yet I'm looking at your Twitter page. All right, and you've said a lot of powerful stuff here about how literally America is now destroying itself. Rather, as I've said, it was so simple. All you had to do was let us share a piece of the pie, a small piece too, because we're used to no piece of the pie. Don't even give us the biggest piece of the pie. Just expand the pie. Everyone gets more pie. And they're like, no, you took a piece of the pie. That was my piece of the pie, a zero sum game. It's always been this way. And I'm looking at your Twitter page. These are, I'm not making this up, folks. Look at Eddie's Twitter page. These are the last articles he's retweeted. Trump administration terminates settlement, aimed at improving wastewater treatment services for Black Alabama communities harmed by raw sewage, calling the agreement, quote, illegal DEI and environmental justice policy. The second thing you posted, Harvard will not comply with the Trump administration's demands to dismantle its diversity programming and limit student protests in exchange for federal funding. Third thing you posted about Gaza, that we fund and support Israel, feted Benjamin Netanyahu, and Israel has bombed the Al Ali hospital, the last functioning Gaza medical facility out of service. And Donald Trump is perfectly fine with it. And today's news that they are now literally engaged in contempt of court because they refuse to bring back an innocent man.
I think the evidence is clear. And you know what I've been thinking about, and I'm not sure how I'm going to cash it out though, Wajat, is this. We toggle between sentimentality and rage. And that is to say, when the country grapples with the issue of racism or white supremacy, it when it feels like it needs to address it, it does so in a way that comes with crocodile tears,
Mm,
right? Oh my God. In other words, they treat us as a kind of charitable enterprise, a philanthropic gesture. And then they ask the question, what else do you want? Because the matter is not justice. The matter is, I am giving something to you because I possess it.
mm,
And then when we continue to push, they move from sentimentality to rage. And then rage evidences itself as our complete erasure. We need to rid us ourselves of the problem that keeps demanding something of us. And so we move from sentimentality to rage, from rage back to sentimentality, because we don't want to deal with the core issue of a just and equitable society. Because the society is organized on the basis of a zero-sum game. Because we believe in the fantasy, the myth that somehow whiteness guarantees someone or some person, right, uh, a superordinate status, possession of the globe, right, in so many ways. And so I don't want crocodile tears. I don't want sentimentality. James Baldwin says sentimentality is the mask for cruelty.
mm.
Hence the almost immediate shift to rage. And so here we are in a moment, again, a moment that is historically familiar, yet wholly unprecedented, right? A moment where the country has tired itself, has tired of the question of racial justice, and has decided to simply remove us from view and literally try to remove us from view, right? Whether it's banning books or disappearing people, right? And to name this, somehow you or we become the racist, which is which is the game.
Yeah, we become race hustlers, sucking at the teat of white liberal guilt. And I just want to say that white liberal guilt is delicious. Salty, but delicious. I'm just kidding. You can use that line if you want. I don't want, similar to sentimentality, I've never wanted guilt because guilt makes you miserable. And I don't want you to be guilty. I want you to be happy. I want you and your family to thrive. I want you to be, dare I say, woke, conscientious, aware, and then work with me to dismantle these systems that ultimately, going back full circle to what you said, harms everyone. White supremacy, I've said this tweet, I think I say this or post this on Twitter or Blue Sky once every 3 to 4 days. White supremacy is self destructive. And I just point to a Trump policy. Look at these tariff policies. Ultimately, white supremacy has always been self destructive, Eddie. And how do we, or do we even, this, I'm going to throw this to you.
Mm,
I was talking to my co host, Danielle Moody, a black woman,
mhm.
and she echoed the sentiment of a lot of people of color. You know what? We did our work. We tried to warn America. We're going to take care of our communities. We're going to take care of our mental health. We're going to take care of our family. Whites, you go figure this one out yourself. You go out in the streets. You go protest. We'll help each other out survive this. We survived it before. Your response.
I understand the reaction, you know. I wrote about this on my Substack, A Native Son, where I talked about being asked the question about separation. That I was giving a talk at a university, and a woman came up to me and she said, "I don't like all of this talk of separation. Baldwin talked about embracing one another, coming together." And I said I was lingering on the word separation, and I was thinking to myself, it's not separation; it's a recoiling.
Recoiling, that's what it is, right?
It's a flinching. It's a flinching back. How could you do this? Trust is cracked wide open. Trust is cracked wide open. Why would you do? And so I understand Danielle's conclusion, but we are on this ship,
Yeah.
and if it sinks, we're going down too. So we can learn how to do the fan dance, and we can help everybody that turn inward as we are wont to do, because we got to make sure. Because whenever the fever dream spikes, our task historically, in the tradition out of which I come, is to get our babies to the other side intact. So I understand the impulse. But what I think is required of us, right, is a kind of wisdom that isn't naive, right? A wisdom about the current circumstances. If we jumped out into the streets right now, it would be the perfect excuse for Trump to engage in another act that would throw the Constitution in the trash bin. He would deploy the military forces immediately in order to do what he wants to do, to exact a certain kind of violence against this particular kind of body. So, but we still have to fight. We still have to fight for the country we want. But I think the way we do it is by telling the truth,
Mm.
and not trying to finagle this thing, trying to um, soft pedal it. What we are confronting is an explicit white nationalist project.
Yep.
And I was saying this about the assault on American universities just the other day. If you were to read William Buckley's 1951 text, "Man, God and Man at Yale," he is railing against universities as these liberal bastions that teach collectivism, Keynesianism, right, secularism. This He is really railing against liberal values. And you know what? In 1951, people like me didn't walk the halls of Princeton and Harvard. We weren't admitted. And so what you do, you get the same critique and you add multiculturalism. That's Alan Bloom. You get the same critique and you add DEI and critical race. This is a long-standing project. And they can send their attack dog, Christopher Rufo, after us. But Rayhan Salam, who leads the Manhattan Institute, who writes for the National Review, this guy, why is the Manhattan Institute suddenly attacking, right, universities and colleges? For what ends? For what purpose? Because I think this is why. Because when it comes to an actual battle of ideas, an exchange of ideas, they can't win.
Nope.
So they have to change the rules and appeal to our darker sides, our darker angels. And that's what's happening. And we fall for the okey doke every single time. So I understand Danielle's point. Some days I feel it. I try to beat back the bitterness and cynicism. But if this place goes down, my baby goes down with it.
Yeah.
And I'd be damned if I let that happen.
No, same here. I'm a father of three kids, and what keeps me engaged, and also Danielle, but she was talking about the recoiling aspect, is because I've lived a good life. I got these gray hairs. I lived longer than I thought I would. It's in my book, several health crises. So yeah, I got three kids, though. And I say that that generation deserves better. And I have to fight for that generation. I don't know if I'm going to see the promised land. I think this is a generational fight, excuse me, Eddie. I think anyone who thinks that in 2026, 2028, even if Democrats win, things are going to get better, it's not how it works. Once the house burns down, folks, the village catches fire. So we're going to have to rebuild. And hopefully, inshallah, what we rebuild will not be restoration, but reformation, something that
Mm-hmm.
this country has refused to engage with, right? They want restoration to this romantic past in which people like you and me didn't get into Princeton. Or God forbid, we're ever invited to speak. So that's what they want, these halcyon days. And the rest of us, women, people of color, black people, LGBTQ, are like, restoration isn't that good. Maybe we should do reformation and try something better, move forward. But like you said, And Carol Anderson, our mutual friend, wrote a fantastic book called White Rage. I strongly recommend people read it. She explicitly talks about what Eddie said, that over a course of 250 pages, each time there's been a step towards progress. White supremacy and white rage has put us in a headlock and tried to drag us back each and every single time. And speaking about how it's related to race, I just want to make another connection. When it comes to education, folks, Eddie's right. The seat of the culture war that is unending was not abortion, was not gender rights. That was an add on. It was always education. Brown versus Board of Education, desegregation. They've been at it since the early 50s. So here we are, folks. It's just dressed up as DEI and CRT. And the question that I have for you, Eddie, is people like you and me
Mm,
who are in it, for better or worse, we got babies. We can't jump ship. We all realize with our wisdom, if we have any wisdom, we're all on the ship together. It's sink or swim, folks.
right.
Um, Two things. Number one, some people are saying some of these folks, even people of color, you mentioned Raheem. Raheem is a brown Muslim guy, an enforcer of white supremacy who sold his soul for a shiny penny, like so many black and brown folks. It's not, you know, the people who are model minorities who become enforcers of white supremacy and decide, you know what, I'll be okay, and I'll be the capo, if you will. Um, but a lot of people are saying, through the pain, the economic pain, finally, these Americans will learn, and then finally they'll be enlightened. Your take on this?
Uh, I don't, I don't believe that evil is ministerial to good.
Mm,
I don't think anything good comes out of uh, um, unnecessary death or tragedy. I mean, we say that in order to deal with the mystery of loss, right? Um, so I don't want to say we need this economic pain for people to lose their livelihoods who've worked all their days only to see it disappear as
agreed.
as the rich kind of snatches everything. The top 1/10% gobbles up everything again. um, I think you use this wonderful language. We don't need to return. It's not nostalgia. We need to reform. We need reformation. We need a fundamental transformation of who we are. And it seems to me that there are some out here, there's some among us, and I've said it earlier, who would rather throw the entire thing away
Oh yeah, burn it all down.
than give it up. They would rather throw the entire country away than give it up. And we need to understand that impulse for what it is, right? I think if I'm answering the question, we need to see it for what it is. And so the economic pain that people are experiencing, and now that they're screaming, it's how can I put it? Would the Trump supporter who's now feeling the pain of his policies as they affect them, would they have said a mumbling word if it hadn't? If
Mm,
those policies only affected us? So part of what we're talking about is a toxic brew of greed, selfishness, and hatred. So the moment the policy started hurting them,
yep.
there was this outcry. And of course, rightly so. But if it didn't hurt them, would the hate that was being directed at us mattered?
No.
And that's what and so if it doesn't so that means something is still in place in the midst of the outcry. And if we're going to have a reformation and transformation, we got to tap the root. And that is this complex intermingling or interconnectedness, right? The interweaving. It's they're tight, they're they're like snakes in a mating ball, coiled
Mm,
together. Hatred, greed, and selfishness. And all three will destroy this republic. Because let's put it this way, Doc. This isn't post World War II. China is not in the midst of the Maoist revolution. The quote unquote third world is not trying to step out from under decolonization, not in the process of decolonization. Europe is not in tatters because it just ate its entrails. The moment the US emerged as a world power, the globe was in tatters.
Yep.
So the idea that these people believe that they're going to win on a battlefield by sidelining all of this talent, by thinking that they alone can do it. Well, I got an affordable flat in Brooklyn to sell.
Final question, Eddie. Thank you so much for everyone joining us. I could listen to you for an hour, but it is unfortunate that we are being destroyed by the dumbest, most racist people on earth. And I agree with you that it's an analogy that I've given for several years. That if it's a choice between sharing a house as co-owners or burning down the house, they will burn down the village. They will burn down the entire village. And everyone said, Waj, you're always talking about race and you're sensitive. I give you 2025 America. I give you literally this week. And also, like you, Eddie, I've said this. I'm not a sociopath, believe it or not. I do not need or want people to suffer in order to feel great again. I'll say this again. I do not need or want people to suffer in order to feel great again. They need me to suffer in order to feel great. And that is a major difference between us two. And I want, despite all of this, Eddie, despite all of them gloating about erasing DEI and our books and sending innocent people to die in prisons in El Salvador, I still want their children to have happiness, economic opportunity, healthcare, good education. Why? Because I'm not a sociopath. And so the final question I have for you, we're only human beings at the end. And after taking so much pain, you wake up one day in the year 2025 and you realize that some of your fellow Americans can only feel success at the expense of your failure. And to retain your humanity and your decency when dealing with racist sociopaths is very difficult. But nonetheless, our spiritual traditions say, and our prophets say, for those of you who believe, and even if you don't believe, uh, be the better person, lean into empathy, expand your heart, save the boat. Um, your advice to those who are struggling to be empathetic, kind, and decent in the face of rage, cruelty, and racism.
First of all, thank you for your voice and what you've been doing. It's so important. We're crying in the wilderness, but we have to shout until we have no voice. Um, Look, in order not to become the monsters we despise, in order for our hearts not to be calloused, we have to beat back the temptation to hate those who hate us. When those people forgave Dylan Roof in that
Mm,
church, many people read that as an example of, the superordinate moral gene in black people. No, 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 no. It has something to do with if I hate that human being has control over me. What does it mean not to let my heart be the possession of those who despise me? So it's not about, you know, some abstract notion of love. It might even be a selfish concern, right? As the wild beasts. This is what Douglas described those who were engaged in hunting fugitive slaves. He called them the wild beasts.
mm.
As the wild beasts roam, right? Our task is not to allow the circumstances of the world to deform our characters, to make us into the demons we despise. So we have to do the hard labor of protecting our hearts, right? And you do that by pulling your loved ones close, right? And you do that by loving and trying to introduce light wherever you are, even in the face of those who despise you. And so I really, really want to echo your point. Despite your hatred of me and despite your judgment of why I'm in the position that I'm in, I want the best for you and your family. I want you to be able to make your dreams a reality, just like I want everybody else in the country and in the world to make their dreams a reality. I don't believe a Jewish baby is valued more than a Muslim baby or a Palestinian child. I cherish all human life. And that value animates the way in which I orient myself in the world. And nobody's going to change that, no matter the hate they direct towards me.
Amen. And as Carrie said, may God protect our hearts, our empathy, our decency, and compassion. We only have one life, folks. It's one way to live. Do not become the monster, the same monster that seeks to destroy you. Be something better. And maybe, Eddie, I don't know. Maybe we can change some hearts. I know you're changing hearts and minds. Eddie Glaude is the author of the Native Son Substack, a Princeton professor. Think about that, folks. A Princeton professor, 50, 70 years ago, who wouldn't be able to go to Princeton. He's now teaching these rich white kids. Eddie, shamelessly promote yourself, sir.
Eddie Glaude, native son on Substack. Please take a look. I'm trying to in some ways bear witness to our time. So that's my shameless plug.
And I'm so proud I'm getting these old heads on Substack Live. I got Norm an hour ago, and I just got Eddie. So see, Eddie, you'll get more subscribers. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry for the audio problems, and I kept Eddie longer than I did. I hope you all take care of yourselves. Until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and please, oh, please, don't be a fascist. Take care.